JTG-Daugherty Racing will rebrand to Hyak Motorsports in 2025. Riley Herbst will officially join 23XI Racing for 2025, and 23XI Racing and Farmer Motorsports have dropped their appeal to the preliminary injunction. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just show them straight those really quickly. We're first going to talk about Chevrolet, as it was officially confirmed that Chevrolet has won the manufacturer's title in all three series in 2024. I cannot remember the last time we've seen one manufacturer win in all three series. I don't think they did it in 2023. I could be wrong. I think maybe Toyota won it last year. So this is a really big deal, and there were a lot of big name people that contributed to this. Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott won a race this year. You think about the Xfinity Series with Shane Van Gisbergen, AJ Allmendinger won this year. The junior motorsports cars of Connor Ziller scored a victory in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Christian Eckes, who dominated the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. William Byron. Fortunately, Kyle Busch did not contribute, but Ross Chastain also picked up a victory, and technically Austin Dillon got a win as well. Massive congratulations, Chevrolet, nonetheless, on winning the manufacturer's title in all three series. It's really, really awesome. It's really amazing to see, and it's a pretty awesome and great accomplishment for them going into 2024. Congratulations to them on all winning the manufacturer's title. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Prema. As it was announced earlier this afternoon that Prema has officially announced their numbers for 2025. So for the number 83 car, Robert Schwartzman, who is part of the Ferrari Academy, will officially join Prema full-time in 2025, while Callum Alla, who was confirmed about a month or so ago, will drive the number 90 for Prema in 2025. Prema is going to be an uncharted organization in 2025 in IndyCar. They're only confirmed full-time team that will not have charters at this time for 2025. They're going to have two young but very talented drivers. Callum Alla is someone who's impressed me in the IndyCar ranks over the course of the last year or so, and has shown a ton of potential over the last year. And Robert Schwartzman, someone who's been really strong in the Formula One Academy. They wanted to get someone young. They got two young drivers, but wanted to bring in a little bit of veteran experience. I think they've got some pretty solid numbers for the 2025 season. I think the 83 was the first year they competed. In 1990, which is the 90 synopsis of the number, was when they won their first championship in Formula 2. To me, I think it's very creative and definitely really interesting, and glad to see that Prema officially has announced their numbers for 2025. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about NASCAR and Flow Sports. As it was announced earlier today that NASCAR and Flow Sports have announced a multi-year extension going forward. I don't know how long the contract is going to be, but it will continue being contributed toward grassroots racing. Things like the NASCAR or ARCA West Series, the ARCA East Series, the NASCAR Modified Tour, the Cars Tour most likely, many other grassroots series, also like the NASCAR Canadian Series that they have, will also be part of that as well. This is a major, major deal. Flow Sports has been absolutely growing their portfolio. They've been picking up a lot of different series, like I mentioned, with the Cars Tour, and they've also got the High Limit Series as well that Kyle Larson and Brad Sweet run. And I think that Flow Sports has continued to be the potential provider for a lot of big things going forward and going down the road. And I really love what they're continuing to do. They've got a lot of big names like Aaron Brennan over there, who I really hope gets a chance and opportunity to cover some races on Fox in the future. But I think this is a really massive and really great partnership, and I think it's pretty awesome and great to see that NASCAR and Flow Sports are going to continue this partnership going forward with the grassroots scene. I think it's a massive and major, major deal, and nonetheless really great to see that NASCAR and Flow Sports will continue their partnership going into 2025 once again. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Max Verstappen and Scott Dixon. Now, if you were on social media over the last day or so, you probably saw that Max Verstappen was actually driving an endurance car, driving potentially a hypercar. And Max did state potentially that he may be interested once his career is done in Formula One, which his contract does go through 2028, by the way, though that could get extended. Max may decide to quit Formula One after 2028 and could potentially go over to the sports car world maybe as early as 2028 or 2029. I thought the photo with Max Verstappen and Scott Dixon, by the way, was really excellent and really great to see. Two of the best drivers in their own right, and also Sergio Perez was there, who will be back, of course, with Red Bull as of now, though there is a chance that Yuki Tsunoda might be getting that right, or Franco Colapinto might be getting that seat. But I really love to see that two of the best drivers are getting a chance and opportunity. And Yuki Tsunoda also might do the Indy 500 in the future if he'd like to do it, which is cool to see another Formula One driver certainly interested in doing another form of racing, even if it's kind of like open wheel. But I think this is such a really cool image to see. Really excellent stuff to great. I think it's amazing to see that you've got Max Verstappen and Scott Dixon in the same photo. Two of the best drivers in the respective rights, and pretty awesome and great stuff overall to see, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Stingray Robb. As it was announced yesterday afternoon that Stingray Robb will officially join Juncos Hollinger Racing in 2025, driving a number 78 car, replacing the former driver of the 78 car for the 2025 season, which was Connor Daly nearing the end of the year. Stingray Robb is going over to this organization in 2025, not based off of talent, but based off of money. And I'm going to be real and honest. The only reason, like I said, he's part of this team in 2025 is because he's bringing a lot of sponsorship dollars and a lot of funding to the program. Because if we're just looking at talent for Stingray Robb, I don't think Stingray Robb is good, in my opinion. He's not really done anything in IndyCar. He's had a couple decent runs. He actually had a really impressive run at the Indy 500. I will give you that. And he has shown potential on the ovals. But really outside of that, what has he truly done in IndyCar? I just don't think he's really done that much. But if it wasn't for funding and sponsorship, he wouldn't get the seat in the first place. Do I think Stingray is going to do good this upcoming season? No, I really don't think he's going to do much, because I don't think he's got the potential to really take this team to the next level. Now, the question will be, who will his teammate be? Connor Daly's name has been mentioned as a front-running candidate for the seat, and that could certainly be a possibility for 2025. Connor would be a really good choice, in my opinion. He probably wouldn't need as much funding. But we know that Romain Grosjean most likely will not be back with this program in 2025, which is a shame. We do know, though, most likely Romain Grosjean is going to be at the Lamborghini program in 2025. To me, though, it's certainly a little bit disappointing to see that we've got Stingray Robb when Jamie Chadwick was there. She has shown a lot of potential in Indy Lights. I think she's a better driver overall than Stingray Robb. It's a shame to see him getting the seat. I don't think he's going to do much. When you've got media members like Jenna Fryer, who I don't fully always respect, criticizing you, you know you've got a major problem on your hands when you're the team. But if funding and sponsorship matters, that's all that matters to a lot of these teams and organizations. I don't agree with it personally, but I'm also not shocked and surprised to see that this is going on, because funding and sponsorship does matter to a lot of these teams and organizations. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Comcast. Now, this is a story that's kind of gone under the radar this past week, because there's been so much NASCAR and motorsports news that has been going on over the last week or so. But a very underlying story that has been happening is that Comcast and basically NBC are going to be selling off a lot of the properties that NBC has. MSNBC, I believe Oxygen, which is part of it, and a couple other brands, including USA, are going to be part of this Comcast spinoff. Now, why is this important to NASCAR? Well, a lot of the broadcasts for the 2025 season are going to be on USA. There are only going to be 5 races that will be on main NBC for the 2025 year, though that could get renegotiated. Now, it does sound like, from what people have been saying, it will not affect for 2025, but 2026 could be the first year that we see major changes coming. I think this is a really important lesson to NASCAR. Maybe the most important thing to your fans is going after the accessibility and not going after the money. Because let's be real and honest here. Cable is dying rapidly. I believe that Comcast said they've lost 4 million subscribers off of this year alone, and cable is dying rapidly and quickly. If it wasn't for live action sports, we wouldn't have cable in the first place. So I think that when you look at this move as a whole, it would definitely affect NASCAR. And this could potentially lead to NASCAR races going on channels like Bravo that are not going to be sold off. Or it could lead to NASCAR races going on Peacock. And I know a lot of people, especially who watch my channel, are not the biggest fan of Peacock. And I've got my own issues with Peacock because it's not perfect and it lags quite a bit. And there's always a lot of issues with the live broadcasting that desperately need to be fixed going forward if it's going to continue. It all is going to be very interesting as time progresses and plays out, but I think this could affect live broadcasting for NASCAR. Now, like I said, it doesn't sound like it will be an issue for 2025, and things can truly change for 2026, but I think as of right now, it's something that we're going to have to continue watching as time progresses and moves on, and we'll see what happens going forward when it comes to Comcast, but I feel like this is such an important story that I feel like not a lot of people outside of Jarrett, aka the Iceberg, have been talking about. I feel like this should be a story that we continue covering and talking about as it progresses. I think there's more going to come out from this, and I think there'll be some changes coming potentially to Comcast in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about James Small. Now, James Small was on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio yesterday, and he spoke on a couple different things. He first began by praising Chase Briscoe for his work ethic and actually showing up to the race shop. But he also criticized Martin Truex Jr. in a pretty big way by basically saying it's actually a really good thing to see someone actually showing up to the race shop who is actually committed and looking to do really, really good things and help our program get better. I can actually build a program around this organization compared to when Martin Truex Jr. was around. Now, it is no secret that Martin Truex Jr. probably phoned it in near the end of his time at Joe Gibbs Racing. I don't think he really cared near the end of his time after he retired, because Martin Truex Jr. went from being a driver who was an outside championship contender and was at one point leading the regular season standings to barely making the playoffs this year and getting eliminated in the round of 16. After he confirmed that he'd be retiring, I don't think Martin Truex Jr. really cared that much. I kind of think he was intentionally trying to miss the playoffs at this point, because I don't really think he really cared about the playoffs, to be perfectly honest. But I feel like when it comes to James Small's comments, I do find him to be a little bit disrespectful. Considering the fact that you look prior to when James Small joined up with Martin Truex Jr., Martin Truex Jr. worked with one of the best crew chiefs of all time, and that is Cole Pearn. Cole Pearn and Martin Truex Jr. gelled together so perfectly well, and Martin Truex Jr. won a championship in 7 races in 2017. In 2018, they scored 4 victories, a final year for Furniture Row, and in 2019, Martin Truex Jr. won 5 or 6 races and made the championship 4. They basically won 24, 25 races. Basically, that was Cole Pearn and Martin Truex Jr. You compare the tenure of James Small and Martin Truex Jr., and it was only 8 victories. So look who's better, Cole Pearn or James Small. I think that Cole Pearn is a way better crew chief than James Small. I really don't like this arrogance, though, from James Small. I get that you feel confident, a lot more confident than you were when you were working with Martin Truex Jr., but at the end of the day, you're not the best crew chief out there. And while I think Chase Briscoe is a very, very good driver, and I think he's going to win a race or two for sure in 2025, I don't know if he's going to perform better, because I think there's definitely some changes that are going to have to be made to definitely make this program a little bit better. Hopefully there's no engine issues and all that stuff, because some of the stuff that happened to Truex was basically quality control. And while the crew chief always doesn't have a right to the quality control, they do have some impact on what happens with that and what adjustments need to be made to the car. That's something that I think that happened with Booty Barker and Bubba Wallace, unfortunately. That's why Bubba Wallace is getting a new crew chief for 2025 with Charles Deneke coming into play. But I think that I found those comments, like I said, from James Small. I get what he was trying to say, that he's trying to praise Chase Briscoe, but I wasn't the biggest fan of him criticizing Martin Truex Jr. Not a big fan of that personally. Not the best thing you can do, considering you weren't the best crew chief with Martin Truex Jr. You didn't put in the work. You didn't put as much effort as a crew chief, and you certainly could have done a much better job. I get being frustrated and upset when things happen. Believe me, I completely understand it. But at the same token and same time, I feel like being as brash as he was toward him was not the best decision you can make, and I completely understand why they probably didn't see eye to eye. I think there genuinely was hatred toward each other in certain ways, and to me, I completely understand why Martin Truex Jr. probably didn't want to work with James Small going forward in the NASCAR Cup Series. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Jeremy Bullins. As it was officially confirmed after weeks of speculation that Jeremy Bullins will officially be joining RFK Racing in 2025, the crew chief for Brad Keselowski in the 2025 season. This will be the first time that Jeremy Bullins has been working with RFK Racing, but this will not be the first time that Jeremy Bullins has worked with Brad Keselowski. From 2020 to 2021, they both worked together. In 2020, they both ended up making the championship 4 and scoring 4 victories. Those coming at Bristol, the Coca-Cola 600, one in New Hampshire, and one another race early in the year as well. On top of that, in 2021, while they didn't win as many races, Brad was one of the more consistent drivers in the field, and Brad, I believe, made it to the round of 8 that year and nearly made the championship 4 and won the race at Talladega Superspeedway. And I think these two coming back to work together is great. After Brad, though, left to go start his own organization, Jeremy continued to stick around in crew chief for Austin Cindric in 2022, where Cindric had a decent rookie season, all things considered, but after that kind of struggled. But I don't think Jerry Bones was the problem. Same thing as when he started working with Harrison Burton near the halfway point of 2023. Harrison Burton never improved, and I think a lot of that had to do with Harrison Burton and not Jeremy Bones. But I think these two working together is a perfect combination in pairing. I think Matt McCall and Brad Keselowski had done a lot of great things together in the NASCAR Cup Series this year. They both had done such a great job working together and improving throughout the year. But Jerry Bones, in my opinion, is a better crew chief than Matt McCall. And Jerry Bones also, I believe, has Xfinity Series championships as a crew chief as well. And I think Jeremy is going to do an exceptional job with Brad in 2025. I think Brad is actually going to win a race or two for sure next year. And I think these two could be outside championship threats and contenders, but there's so much competition in 2025. You've, of course, got Shane Van Gisbergen joining. You've got other drivers joining this series. And I think there's a lot of other moves that are coming very, very soon that just have not been announced yet. But I really like this combination for next year. This is going to be a really strong pairing, and I think that Jeremy's going to do great things. One thing that's been asked about is what is going on with Ryan Preece's crew chief. Some have thought maybe Chad Johnson or Richard Boswell were going to be the crew chief for him, but Chad Johnson's working as the manager of race engineering over there. And then, of course, we do know now that Richard Boswell's working with RCR with Austin Dillon. So we're going to have to wait and see who the crew chief is. Maybe someone internally from RFK might be the crew chief next year. But I think Jerry Bones, nonetheless, is making a really good decision for his career, and I'm really looking forward to see what he can do with this, because I really do believe that in 2025, we're going to see a really strong pairing from both these guys in the 2025 season. And now we're going ahead to move on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Daniel Hemric. Now, I did a video covering this on the channel yesterday, but it was officially confirmed yesterday morning that Daniel Hemric will be joining McAnally-Hilgemann Racing full-time in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series in 2025, driving a number 19 Napa Auto Park Chevrolet Silverado at SLT. Daniel Hemric will be taking over for Christian Eckes, who of course will move up to the NASCAR Xfinity Series full-time in the 2025 season with Kaulig Racing. The big thing he knows that Daniel Hemric will not have Charles Deneke, as Charles Deneke, like I've already mentioned, will be the crew chief for Bubba Wallace in 2025. This is a really solid replacement, though, for Christian Eckes. I think you need someone to come in there that was going to bring a lot of veteran presence to the organization and also bring a little bit of funding to the table, but has shown a lot of potential. And I think Daniel Hemric has been that guy that has shown a lot of potential over the course of the last couple of years. I think in 2021, he won the NASCAR Xfinity Series Championship by winning one race. And while he's only had one win, one thing about Daniel Hemric that I think a lot of people in the industry really respect about him is how he keeps his nose clean every time he's out on the racetrack. I think he's one of the few drivers that had a lack of DNFs this year. And honestly, with Kaulig Racing, while he wasn't great by any stretch of imagination, he honestly did about what I thought he was going to do. I thought he'd get a couple top 10s, which he certainly did. And to be fair, near the end of this year, he was qualifying a lot better and running a lot better genuinely on speed. It shows that Kaulig, especially with Ty Norris going into the program to help them, it shows that Hemric was showing a lot of improvement. And Daniel Hemric even said it today, there's really nothing wrong with going back down to the Truck Series. They were going to need someone in there that's going to have to go up against Corey Heim. And I think Daniel Hemric is the perfect driver to put behind the wheel. Yes, would a Corey LaJoie and Zane Smith been decent options? Definitely, for sure. But Zane Smith is still likely going to front row. And Corey LaJoie has been heavily rumored to be going maybe as Rick Ware at this point, though we may not even see him in a cup car or any sort of racing machine in 2025. We're just going to have to wait and see. But I really think Daniel Hemric is going to be a championship contender. And my prediction for Hemric is that he is going to win races. I think he's going to win more than just one race in 2025. In fact, I think he's going to win 2 or 3 races this upcoming season, because I think Daniel Hemric is definitely capable of doing that in 2025. I also think he will make the championship 4. I think he'll be one of the few guys most of this year that will be able to keep up with Corey Heim throughout 2025. Now, obviously, Ty Majeski's back in the Truck Series, as of my understanding. Grant Enfinger is going to be back. You've got Lane Riggs coming back, where I think Lane Riggs is going to be another one of those guys that really can contend. And Caden Honeycutt, who will be joining full-time with Nice Motorsports. I really think Caden Honeycutt is going to be super strong with this program in 2025 with Nice Motorsports. And I really think that them bringing Hemrick in and bringing someone who's a veteran to the program, by the way, is really, really huge. So I'm super excited about this. I think Daniel Hemrick is an excellent driver. Well, not excellent, but he's a very solid driver. He's an Xfinity champion. I think he's earned the right to try to prove himself once again. I think going back down to the NASCAR Truck Series, once again to try to prove himself, to me, that is not a bad move for a driver that's especially not super young, but not super old either. And maybe this could lead Hemrick in the future going back up to the Cup Series, maybe pulling a John Hunter Nemechek and going back up the Cup. That certainly could be a possibility. But I like this move from McAnally. I think it's a solid move, and I'm looking forward to see what Daniel Hemrick can do at McAnally-Hilgemann Racing in 2025. And now we're going to jump on to the first of three major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Riley Herbst. As it was officially confirmed yesterday that Riley Herbst will officially be joining 23XI Racing full-time in the NASCAR Cup Series in 2025. Driving instead of the number 67, he'll be using the number 35 car in 2025. Monster Energy is going to sponsor him for majority of the races in the 2025 season, as they've had a prior association with Kurt Busch and Tyler Reddick. And also, Davin Recibo, who worked with Riley Herbst in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, will be the crew chief for Riley Herbst in 2025. This is definitely a little bit of a controversial move from 23XI Racing when you look at Corey Heim. Corey Heim won a lot of races with Tricon. He's one of the youngest, winningest drivers in Truck Series history. He's got like 10 or 11 Truck Series wins, won 6 races, the most of anybody in the Truck Series this past year, and made the championship 4. But people are probably wondering, why did they not choose Corey Heim, but instead choose Riley Herbst? Well, there's a big reason for that. Riley Herbst brings a massive paycheck. Riley Herbst is one of those people that's got family funding, and that's one of the big reasons why that he's getting this shot in opportunity. But don't get it twisted. While Riley Herbst is someone that I think needs a little bit more improvement going forward, and probably maybe could have needed another year in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, I do think that Riley Herbst is a very solid driver. I think he has shown potential this year in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and since the end of 2023, he's really figured it out. He dominated that race at Las Vegas, and in the final 5 or 6 races, he was a legitimate contender up front despite missing the playoffs. He showed a lot of potential near the end of the year. And then I think about 2024. He had his first multi-win season in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, winning one of his best performances at Indianapolis, having one of the fastest cars in that event, and also doing an extremely well job at Phoenix, basically getting overshadowed by the championship, but led 170 laps in that event and dominated that performance. I think, and also, he won the Baja 1000 this past week, so I think he's done a solid job, and I think he's earned an opportunity in this seat for 2025. Now, this is going to be a solid organization for the 2025 season. You're going to, of course, have Tyler Reddick back in the 45 car next year, which we expect Tyler Reddick to be a championship contender. I think he will be in the top 10 at minimum and probably top 5 in the points near the end of the year. Then you've got Bubba Wallace, who will drive the 23 car once again. Bubba Wallace is probably going to be a playoff contender. I think he will win a race in 2025. And I think that Bubba Wallace, who probably should have made the playoffs this year, I think he will be very, very strong in the 2025 season. And then you've got Riley Herbst. And I do think for sure Riley Herbst is going to be the weakest link. Kind of like I think Ryan Preece will be the weakest link at a team like RFK, though I think Ryan Preece will be in the top 20 in points. I don't expect Riley Herbst to be a playoff contender this upcoming season. The playoff field is very, very strong. You've, of course, got his 2 teammates of Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick. You've got potentially the front row team that's going to show a lot of improvement of guys like Noah Gragson, Todd Gillen, and potentially Zane Smith. You, of course, do have other organizations, like I said, a Trackhouse with Ross St. Diel Swartz and Shane Van Gisbergen, Hendrick Motorsports with Kyle Larson, William Byron, Alex Bowman, and then, of course, Chase Elliott. Joe Gibbs Racing with Chase Briscoe, Denny Hamlin, Ty Gibbs, and Christopher Bell. You've got a lot of drivers that are going to be playoff contenders, and in Team Penske, of course, you cannot forget about them. I think he will probably finish around 20th to 25th in the points, probably in the low 20s, though. Basically not in the upper 20s, probably the lower 20s, like between that 20th to 25th place. I think he will get some top 10s, but I think one area where he could definitely win is at the super speedways. Riley Herbst, in my opinion, is one of the more underrated super speedway drivers in the field. I think that if he proves me wrong and does a really great job this year and somehow makes the playoffs, which would be super, super impressive, that would basically be a massive thumbs up in praise for me. And I would love to see him have that chance and opportunity to make the playoffs in 2025. Is he going to make the playoffs, though? Probably not. I think the only way Riley Herbst will make the playoffs in 2025 is by winning a race. That's the only shot I think he's got of making it to the playoffs. Now, the other thing is Davin Recibo, and I think these two working together is going to be a major deal for the organization. Davin is one of the most underrated crew chiefs out there, and really I think has been a major reason why Riley Herbst has shown so much growth and so much improvement as a driver over the last year or so. So I really, really like this move of Davin Recibo being the crew chief for Riley Herbst in 2025. Again, I think this is a really solid group they've got for next year. I really do think, like I said, that Riley Herbst is going to show improvement. I think he's going to get better as a driver this upcoming season, and I really believe that Riley Herbst will have a pretty solid year with this team in 2025. I think he will be top 20, top 25. We'll see how he ends up doing. It is a multi-year deal. Bob Pockers did confirm that. They are going to run 3 cars. It's unknown if they're going to run the Clash at this point for that upcoming season. But at the end of the day, it's official that Riley Herbst will be going to 23XI Racing full-time in 2025. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next big story of today's episode as we're talking about JTG-Daugherty Racing. I also did a video covering this earlier this evening, but it was officially confirmed after days and weeks of speculation that JTG-Daugherty Racing will officially be rebranding to Hyak Motorsports in 2025. The ownership group is going to be changing for 2025. Gordon Smith, who's been one of the majority owners of the program since 2023, will take over as the majority owner of the team. Brad Daugherty is going to be sticking around as a minority owner of the program. Also, I believe Ernie Cope and another member that I can't remember exactly will be a part of the ownership group in 2025. And Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who signed a 3-year contract extension with the team, will stick around with this organization in 2025. Now, why is this change happening for JTG-Daugherty Racing going to Hyak Motorsports? Well, there are a couple of major reasons why this is happening. Number one, Tad and Jody Geschecter are no longer at this program. They've kind of stopped having interest of being part of owning a racing team last year, according to what was reported. And they're no longer working here. It's unknown if they're working at the law firm or doing some sort of law firm work or something, helping out with the Kroger branding, or they're basically going to work with Joe Gibbs Racing. There's been a lot of rumors and speculation that Tad and Jody Geschecter, who have been helping some sponsorship over at the organization there, it's rumored that they are also helping them as well and probably helping with the Kroger funding as well. Second reason is Kroger. Kroger, which of course has been associated with that program, will basically be leaving this team and going over to RFK Racing in 2025. Ryan Preece will be sponsored for pretty much every single race in 2025 by some sort of Kroger funding, whether that's Coca-Cola, Kimberly-Clark, and the other groups that work over at Kroger as well. And Chris Buescher and Brad Gazossi also will have some Kroger funding in the 2025 season. That's another big reason why this change is coming. This is definitely going to be something to get used to, though, I think, for a lot of fans, because you think about the Hyak Motorsports group and you think about JTG-Daugherty. That iconic JTG-Daugherty brand has been around for a very, very long time. I became a fan in 2007, so about 20 years ago, and I remember JTG-Daugherty being in the NASCAR Xfinity Series that year with the 59 car of Marcus Ambrose getting behind the wheel. And then of them officially going full-time in 2009, getting help from a team like Michael Waltrip Racing. And then seeing Marcus Ambrose kind of really help build this program back up. And then, of course, they switched from Toyota to Chevrolet in 2014. AJ Allmendinger got him a win in 2014 and made the playoffs. And then Allmendinger kind of floundered a little bit before going over to Kaulig Racing and contending for a couple championships at that program. And then they brought Chris Buescher in 2019, where I think he actually showed quite a bit of potential from 2017 to 2019. And then they got Stenhouse in 2020 along with Ryan Preece around that time, and they kind of struggled a little bit and floundered. But in 2023, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. showed a lot of potential, showed a lot of promise, and I think he did a really, really good job in 2023. Yes, he won the Daytona 500, but what people forget is Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was one of the most consistent drivers in 2023. He had a really strong year that year and only had like one DNF, I think, the whole entire year, and had one of the better average finishes in the field. And now, speaking of Stenhouse, like I've already mentioned, he will be sticking around and driving for this team in 2025. Now, the big question is, how long is this organization going to last? Because without the Kroger funding, I really am nervous for this team going into like 2026. Could Ricky Stenhouse Jr. potentially become a free agent in the 2026 season? I think that is certainly a really big possibility because, yes, he signed a 3-year extension, but contracts can easily be broken. If they can't find funding, which I do think NAS Energy will be part of that program, and I have to think Sonny D, which has been associated with Stenhouse for a few years now, for at least a while, I'd have to think that they're still going to be sticking around with Stenhouse for the future. But you're going to have to find other funding. And I do think there's probably going to be some funding out there that could be available. Maybe they try to convince FedEx to sponsor, which I think that'd be absolutely wild. Go from a big team to kind of a smaller team, though, which has a smaller budget. But I think that for this team, it is certainly very interesting. Now, what are my expectations for this team in 2025? I don't think they're going to be great next year. I'm going to be real and honest. I think that them losing the Kroger funding is going to affect them. I think Stenhouse will probably regress just a little bit. I think Stenhouse is a good race car driver. I don't think Stenhouse really gets enough credit. He's a really good super speedway racer, one of the best in the field without question. But I don't think Stenhouse gets the full credit that I think he truly deserves as a talent. The guy won 2 Xfinity Series championships with Roush. And I don't think that he really has gotten a fair shake in the Cup Series. And I'm worried that he potentially could end up losing his seat at this program in the future because I do think funding could come into play. Or if like Junior Motorsports comes in and buys up that program, which could certainly be a possibility going forward and down the road. To me, though, when I look at this rebrand and name change, sometimes rebrands are a good thing, which I think they were going to. I don't think they really had a choice when Tad and Jody left the program recently. I don't think they were really going to have an option or a choice, but to make that move where they changed and rebranded the program. I am really hoping that they don't get affected performance, but like I said, I really am worried that their performance is going to dip and sink a little bit. Again, I think there's going to be some struggles coming along the way for this program in 2025. Hopefully they can prove me wrong and do a great job. But like I said, I'm a little nervous and I'm certainly a little bit worried about this program going into 2025. Hopefully they can do a really good job for the 2025 season. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports. As we had some major breaking news that came out last night that I covered on the channel earlier this week. But basically, 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports have confirmed that they have officially dropped their appeal to the preliminary injunction ruling. And there are 2 options that we'll get to in just a minute. Let's go back to the beginning of the situation with the 2311 and Front Row lawsuit. Currently, 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports are currently suing NASCAR at this moment on antitrust claims. They were the only 2 charter organizations from the previous charter thing that did not sign the new charter agreement. And it was announced about a month or so ago, a couple weeks after the playoffs had begun, that they were going to be suing NASCAR. They went back and forth with releasing letters, with releasing claims, among other things, and basically there was a compiled list of letters that came out. The teams, of course, had in 24 hours, basically the 6 hours they were sent to basically go ahead and sign those charters, which I think then everything kind of went to this. Then the teams asked for preliminary injunction hearing, the original preliminary injunction where they sent in both of their things, and Judge Frank Whitney, who actually tried to dismiss himself from the case, basically because I think he had prior association with NASCAR, he was trying to go ahead and dismiss himself from the current case at this particular time. But the teams basically said, no, we want you to stick around and continue hearing the case. We don't think that's going to be a conflict of interest. Then during championship week, they had the preliminary injunction hearing. And then on Friday during the State of Sport address, where they talk about new manufacturers like Honda coming in and other manufacturers and other stuff like officiating coming in, it was confirmed that 2311 and Front Row Motorsports had shockingly, in a way, lost their preliminary injunction hearing. Then they went ahead and tried to go ahead and appeal the preliminary injunction, and then it was confirmed about a week or so ago that basically they will run as open teams currently at the moment for 2025, though that can change if they can go to the next thing. So what does this mean for the lawsuit going forward? Well, there are 2 options that could come out of this. Number 1 is have a new preliminary injunction hearing. Basically change things up in your original preliminary injunction, not go toward the speculative side of things, because I think that's one thing that really hurt 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports in this lawsuit and in the preliminary injunction hearing is basically saying certain things in speculative stuff. basically prove that it's not speculative and prove that you're going to lose a lot of money as an open organization, especially if one of your cars end up failing to make the field. You've actually got to prove it, and you actually have to show it a little bit. That's what I think they are going to be looking at. So that's what they can end up doing, which I think is the most likely option to come out of this. Or option number 2 is a settlement coming into play. And this is another theory that I have as well, especially with the announcement of Riley Herbst going to 23XI Racing and them announcing this. I don't think it's completely a full coincidence. I do think there is a chance that a settlement could be coming in the not-so-distant future. I think it's probably the least likely option with the lawsuit, and it probably will still continue on going forward, but I think a settlement could definitely be a potential possibility. But we got to think about this for a minute. This preliminary injunction, another one of these, it probably will not be heard till probably around Christmas time because NASCAR is probably going to take their sweet time. They wanted to have all their stuff done and waste a really, really long time trying to get it done, while the teams were really originally wanting to get the preliminary injunction hearing done very, very quickly. As for me, who's been covering this lawsuit, I've tried not to show my bias in this, even though I probably have a little bit, because what the teams really, really want is the sport to be a lot healthier for the teams in the sport. I think it's no secret that the current business model that NASCAR has right now is not sustainable for the teams. They're still using a business model from the 90s and the early 2000s when the sport was booming and sponsors were coming around and they were willing to pay a lot of money. But it's been almost 30 years since the 90s, and it's been nearly 20-something years since the peak of the sport. The sport peaked next year, 20 years ago, and that's when the sport peaked. And started declining in the late 2000s, and a lot of these teams had to close up shop, among other things. And it's no secret that the other teams and organizations that signed the charter agreement in 2016 or in late 2015, when it came into play, they basically said they started making less money than they originally had. Kind of a coincidence? I think not. We do know, though, that the teams are going to be getting at least 50% of the revenue, so that's a really big win, I think, for the teams when it comes to that. But I think that them at least running as open teams is a good thing. Now, could they miss races if they don't have this preliminary injunction stuff? Absolutely. I think they will miss the Clash most likely since, again, only charter teams are required to be at the Clash. But I also think there's a chance you'll see Bubba Wallace and Todd Gillen and Zane Smith and Noah Gragson and probably the other drivers like Tyler Reddick and Riley Herbst there. We know also that 23XI is looking to run a 4th car. I think the fact that they open up a 3rd car full time, I think is really unfortunate, going to hurt their case at least in a little bit of a way. And I think that will sadly affect them slightly when it comes to this lawsuit going into the future. Again, I think for 23XI and Front Row, the next step, if you want to continue this lawsuit, you need to have another preliminary injunction. And again, we may not have another one of these settled until late of this year, probably middle to late December, right around Christmas time. We may be hearing about this around the holidays, and I think that is certainly interesting. And keep in mind, we are less than 3 months away from the season technically starting, and really only about 2.5 months, if we're going to be real and honest, from the season officially starting. So I think they've got to figure that out. For the 4th car, though, for 23XI, we could see someone like a Carl Edwards, Kurt Busch, or like Mark Truex Jr., Corey I'm get behind the wheel, or maybe Kumu Kobayashi. That could certainly be a possibility, too. But I think for 23XI and Front Row, again, I've listened to both sides, and I think both sides, when it comes to the lawsuit, have brought up really good points. I think NASCAR, they brought up some really strong, good points throughout their side of the lawsuit, contradicting the teams, but they've also been a little bit negative, saying that they basically didn't want to rush it, which I completely disagree with them basically saying that, considering they forced the teams to sign the charter. Yes, I know they probably only added a couple extra pages to the lawsuit, but I still do believe that they forced them and rushed them, which I'm not a big fan of doing that personally. That's just my opinion, and I think that definitely is something that could affect NASCAR side of things. Now, NASCAR, obviously, they don't want to open their books. That's one of the reasons why they really would probably like a settlement at this point, even though they don't want to settle. I think if you're NASCAR in this case, you should probably go ahead and try to settle this, because you don't want to open up your books, because that could bring out a lot of damaging stuff towards you. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in regards to the rest of the lawsuit. Again, I think we're going to have more coming out and more information coming out as time progresses and goes on. And I think as more stuff comes out, you'll probably hear on the channel as we get more information here coming in the next few weeks. So, that is going to be tonight's NASCAR news and motorsports news episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Let's go below that and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. Who do you think is going to win the lawsuit, 2011 or front row? Or NASCAR. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about all the stories we talk about today on the channel, including JTG-Daugherty Racing rebranding to Hyak Motorsports? Let me know it in the comments below. There might be more videos dropping later today. There's some news that potentially could be coming throughout the day, especially with how crazy this week has been. Tomorrow there's going to be potentially playoff predictions for 2025 for the Cup Series, and there's also going to be some other really cool content dropping really soon, including my NASCAR Cup Series predictions for 2025. You will see that at some point. Got a lot of great content dropping that I cannot wait for you guys to check out. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.